The sound of breaking glass echoed through the hallway as I pressed myself against my bedroom door, heart pounding. Another one of Marcus's tantrums. Another day of walking on eggshells in the Henderson household. "It's okay, sweetheart," I heard Mom's voice drifting up the stairs, soft and consoling. "You're just stressed about the job interview tomorrow. Let me clean this up." I rolled my eyes, sliding down to sit on my worn carpet. 24 years old, and Marcus still had our parents wrapped around his finger, the golden boy who could do no wrong even when he was doing everything wrong. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My phone buzzed with a text from my college roommate Sarah. "Coffee tomorrow? Want to hear about your interview at Miller & Associates?" Right. My interview. The one I'd been preparing for months. The entry-level position at the prestigious law firm downtown. Mom and Dad didn't even know about it. Why would they? They were too busy managing Marcus's latest crisis to notice that their younger daughter had graduated summa cum laude and was actually trying to build a career. The front door slammed shut, and I heard Dad's heavy footsteps on the stairs. He knocked gently on my door. "Emma, can I come in?" I opened the door to find Dad looking exhausted, his tie loosened and his usually neat hair disheveled. At 52, Robert Henderson looked like he'd aged a decade in the past year alone. "Hey kiddo, sorry about the noise downstairs. Your brother's going through a rough patch." "When isn't he?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Dad sighed, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Emma, you know Marcus has been struggling since the divorce. Patricia really did a number on him, and now, with the custody battle over little Sophia." "Dad, Marcus has been struggling since high school. This isn't new." I sat across from him, choosing my words carefully. "And maybe if he hadn't cheated on Patricia 3 times, there wouldn't be a custody battle." "That's not fair, Emma. Relationships are complicated." I bit my tongue. Complicated. That's what they always called it when Marcus screwed up. When he crashed Dad's car senior year, complicated. When he dropped out of college after 2 semesters, despite them paying full tuition, complicated. When he moved back home at 26 with a pregnant girlfriend, he barely knew, complicated. But when I asked to borrow the car for job interviews, I was being demanding. When I requested help with my student loans, I was told to be more independent. "Anyway," Dad continued, "we're gonna need you to cover Marcus's car payment this month, just until he gets back on his feet. The garage let him go last week and—" "They fired him?" I interrupted. "Laid him off, budget cuts." Dad's eyes didn't meet mine. I had heard this story before. Marcus had been laid off from 6 jobs in 3 years. Each time, Mom and Dad found a way to explain it that made him the victim. "Dad, I can't cover his car payment. I'm barely making ends meet with my part-time job at the bookstore, and I have my own expenses." "It's just temporary, Emma. Family helps family." The irony wasn't lost on me. When I'd asked them to co-sign my student loans, they'd said they couldn't risk their credit. When I needed money for interview clothes, I was told to shop at thrift stores. But Marcus's car payment? That was a family emergency. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll figure it out." Dad squeezed my shoulder. "You're a good sister, Emma. Marcus is lucky to have you." After he left, I stared at my laptop screen, reviewing my notes for tomorrow's interview. Miller & Associates was my dream job, the chance to work under some of the best attorneys in the state, to finally prove I was more than just the responsible one in the Henderson family. My phone rang. Marcus. Hey, look, I need a favor." "Let me guess, money?" "Just a small loan. I've got this girl I'm trying to impress, and I want to take her somewhere nice. You know how it is." I almost laughed. "Marcus, you're supposed to be focused on getting Sophia back. Isn't that what this whole sob story is about?" "Don't be such a bitch, Emma. One dinner isn't going to ruin my chances with my daughter." The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach turn. This was the brother my parents worried about, the one they bent over backward to protect and provide for. "I'm not lending you money for a date, Marcus." "Come on, Em. It's not like you're spending it on anything important. You never go out, never have fun. At least let someone enjoy your sad little savings account." I'm hanging up now. Wait, look, I'm sorry. I'm just stressed, okay? This whole situation with Patricia and the lawyers, it's killing me. And Mom and Dad are breathing down my neck about getting a job. There it was, the manipulation tactic that had worked for years. The moment Marcus sensed pushback, he'd switched to vulnerable victim mode. I can't help you, Marcus. I have my own things to worry about. Like what? Your little bookstore job? You're 24 and living at home. Maybe it's time to get realistic about your expectations. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, his words echoing in my head. Get realistic about my expectations. This from someone who'd never held a job for more than 8 months, who'd never paid rent, who'd never taken responsibility for anything in his entire life. I walked to my dresser and pulled out my interview outfit, a navy blazer I'd bought on clearance and altered myself, paired with a skirt I'd borrowed from Sarah. Tomorrow, I was going to walk into Miller & Associates and show them what Emma Henderson was really capable of. The sound of voices drifted up from downstairs, Mom and Marcus talking in hushed tones. She's being selfish, Mom. I'm going through the hardest time of my life, and she can't even help her own brother. I know, sweetheart. Emma's always been a little cold. She doesn't understand what it's like to really struggle. Cold. That's what they called it when I set boundaries. When I refused to enable Marcus's destructive behavior, I was cold. When I prioritized my own future over his immediate wants, I was selfish. I grabbed my headphones and turned up my music, drowning out their conversation. Tomorrow was the beginning of something new. Tomorrow I was going to start building a life where my worth wasn't measured by how much I sacrificed for someone who'd never appreciate it. But first, I had to survive another night in the Henderson House of Mirrors, where up was down, wrong was right, and the victim was always the one who'd never actually been hurt. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. I just didn't know how right I was, or how much my family would need me when their perfect son's carefully constructed lies finally came crashing down. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The lobby of Miller & Associates gleamed with polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. I smoothed my blazer one final time before approaching the reception desk, where a woman with perfectly styled silver hair smiled warmly. Emma Henderson for the paralegal interview with Ms. Rodriguez. Of course, she's running just a few minutes behind. Please have a seat. I settled into one of the leather chairs, reviewing my notes when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Marcus had to go to the emergency room. Where are you? My heart skipped. Despite everything, he was still my brother. I quickly typed back. Job interview. What happened? Is he okay? Panic attack. He's fine now, but very shaken. Can you come to St. Mary's? Before I could respond, a tall woman with kind eyes and a firm handshake appeared before me. Emma? I'm Carmen Rodriguez, senior partner. Ready? The interview flew by in a blur of questions about legal research, case management, and my academic achievements. Ms. Rodriguez seemed impressed by my law review publications and my internship at the public defender's office. Your professors speak very highly of you, she said, glancing at my transcript. Dean Morrison specifically mentioned your work on the wrongful conviction project. That takes real dedication. Thank you. I believe everyone deserves quality legal representation regardless of their circumstances. Excellent. Now this position would require long hours, especially during trial preparations. You'd be working closely with our litigation team on some high-stakes cases. Are you prepared for that level of commitment? Absolutely. I've been preparing for this opportunity my entire academic career. Ms. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. We'll be making our decision by Friday. You should hear from us early next week. Walking out of the building, I felt lighter than I had in months. The interview had gone better than I'd dared hope. For 45 minutes, I'd been evaluated solely on my merits, my achievements, my potential. Not as Marcus Henderson's sister or the Henderson family disappointment. My phone rang immediately. Dad? Emma, where the hell are you? Your brother is in the hospital and you're nowhere to be found. I texted Mom back. I was in a job interview. Is Marcus actually hurt, or? He had a severe panic attack triggered by stress. The doctor says it could have been a heart episode if he hadn't gotten treatment. And you're worried about some job interview? The guilt hit like a physical blow. This was the Henderson family specialty, making me feel selfish for having my own life. I'm coming now, Dad. St. Mary's emergency room smelled like disinfectant and desperation. I found my family in the waiting area, Mom clutching a coffee cup with shaking hands while Dad paced angrily. "How is he?" I asked. "They gave him something for anxiety," Mom said without looking up. "The doctor wants to keep him for observation." "What triggered it?" Dad stopped pacing. He got a call from Patricia's lawyer this morning. She's filing for full custody and wants to move Sophia to California with her new boyfriend. My stomach dropped. Whatever else Marcus was, he genuinely loved his 3-year-old daughter. Losing her would devastate him. "I'm sorry, that's terrible." "He needs a good lawyer, Emma," Dad said. "Someone who can fight this. We can't let that woman take Sophia across the country." "Family law isn't my area, but I could ask around, see who." "No, Emma, he needs you to represent him." I stared at Dad in disbelief. "I'm not even a lawyer yet. I won't take the bar exam for another 3 months. But you know the law better than anyone. You could file the paperwork, research the cases." "Dad, that's not how it works. Marcus needs an experienced family attorney, someone who's handled custody cases before." "Those lawyers cost thousands of dollars we don't have," Mom interjected. "The consultation alone is $500. "Then maybe Marcus should have thought about that before he cheated on his wife multiple times and lost his job again." The words hung in the air like a slap. Dad's face turned red. "Your brother made mistakes, but that little girl is innocent. She needs her father. And she deserves a father who's stable and responsible." "How can you be so cold? This is your niece we're talking about." There it was again. Cold. Heartless. Selfish. The labels they pinned on me whenever I refused to clean up Marcus's messes. A doctor in scrubs approached us. "Henderson family? Marcus is awake and asking for you." Marcus looked pale against the white hospital sheets, an IV in his arm and monitors beeping softly. His eyes found mine immediately. Thank God you're here. Tell them about the job thing, how you could help me with the legal stuff." "Marcus, I can't represent you. I'm not licensed to practice law." "But you could help, right? Research cases? Write briefs? I can't afford a real lawyer, and Mom and Dad are already stretched thin." I looked around the room at my family's expectant faces. The same faces that had dismissed my achievements, minimized my goals, and treated my success as somehow less important than Marcus's failures. "I got the Miller and Associates interview today," I said quietly. "That's nice, dear," Mom said absently. "But right now we need to focus on what's really important." What's really important? Not my career, not my future, not the opportunities I'd worked years to create. What was really important was, once again, dropping everything to save Marcus from the consequences of his own actions. "If I help with the legal research," I said slowly, "it's temporary, and Marcus has to prove he's serious about changing. Steady job, counseling, anger management." "Whatever you want, Em, I'll do anything to keep Sophia." Dad smiled for the first time all day. "See, when this family works together, we can handle anything." But as I looked at Marcus lying in that hospital bed, promising things he'd promised 100 times before, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a mistake. A mistake that would cost me the one chance I'd had to build something that was truly mine. "I need to make some calls," I said, stepping into the hallway. Instead, I found myself staring out the window at the city skyline, wondering if Ms. Rodriguez was already reviewing other candidates. Candidates who wouldn't disappear into family emergencies. Candidates who could commit fully to the demanding schedule she'd described. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "How did it go?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Complicated." Just like everything else in the Henderson family, the law library at Northwestern University has become my second home over the past week. Surrounded by towers of family law textbooks and legal precedents, I dove into Marcus's case with the same intensity I'd once reserved for my own studies. Despite my reservations, I couldn't let my niece Sophia disappear across the country without a fight. "You look like you could use some caffeine." I glanced up to find a tall man with dark hair and warm brown eyes holding 2 coffee cups. He wore a well-tailored suit but had loosened his tie, suggesting he'd been here as long as I had. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" I asked. Daniel Chen, third-year law student. I've seen you here every night this week, usually surrounded by the entire family law section. He gestured to my fortress of books. Mind if I sit? You look like you could use someone to bounce ideas off. Something about his genuine smile made me nod. Emma Henderson. And you're right about the caffeine. He slid the extra cup across the table. Working on something interesting? Custody case. My brother's ex-wife wants to relocate to California with their daughter. I'm trying to build arguments for why the move isn't in the child's best interest. Daniel's eyebrows rose. That's complex territory. Are you working with an attorney or? It's complicated. The Henderson family motto. I'm not licensed yet, obviously, but my family can't afford proper representation. I actually worked for a family law firm last summer, Morrison, Blake & Associates. I saw a lot of these cases. He pulled out a notepad. What's the mother's reasoning for the move? For the next 2 hours, Daniel helped me navigate legal precedents I'd been struggling with alone. He explained procedural nuances, suggested research directions, and helped me organize my arguments in a way that made sense. More importantly, he listened without judgment when I mentioned my family situation. So you're essentially acting as an unlicensed paralegal for your brother while juggling job interviews? He asked. Something like that. I had what I thought was a great interview at Miller & Associates last week, but I trailed off. But family obligations got in the way? They always do. The admission surprised me. I rarely opened up to strangers, but something about Daniel felt safe. Sorry, I don't usually dump my personal problems on people I just met. No dumping detected, just someone trying to help a family while building their own career. That's admirable, not something to apologize for. I studied his face for signs of pity or judgment, but found only understanding. You sound like you speak from experience. First-generation college student. My parents own a small restaurant in Chinatown. I get the family pressure thing, trust me. He gathered his papers. Listen, I need to head out, but I'll be here tomorrow night if you want to go over the motion to deny relocation. I have some templates that might help. After he left, I sat staring at my notes, feeling lighter somehow. When was the last time someone had offered to help me without expecting something in return? When had anyone acknowledged that what I was trying to do was difficult, rather than just assumed I should handle it all? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How's the legal stuff going? Patricia's lawyer filed more paperwork today. I sighed and packed up my books. Time to return to reality. At home, I found Marcus in the kitchen with Mom, going through a stack of legal documents. He looked better than he had in the hospital, but there was a manic energy about him that I recognized, the kind that preceded his worst decisions. Perfect timing. Look at this bullshit Patricia's lawyer sent. He waved a paper at me. They're claiming I'm an unfit parent because I don't have a permanent address. You live here with Mom and Dad, that's permanent. But it's not my own place. They're making it sound like I'm some kind of deadbeat who can't provide for his daughter. Mom rubbed Marcus's shoulder soothingly. Don't let them get to you, sweetheart. Emma will figure out how to fight this. The casual assumption that I would fix everything grated on me, but I focused on the documents. Patricia's attorney had done their homework. They documented Marcus's job history, his living situation, even the domestic disturbance calls from when he and Patricia were still married. Marcus, some of these incidents, were you ever physical with Patricia? His face darkened. Are you taking her side now? I'm asking a legal question. If there's evidence of domestic violence, it changes everything. I never hit her. We argued, sure, but I never laid a hand on her. Mom nodded vigorously. Marcus would never hurt anyone. Patricia was always dramatic, always calling the police over nothing. I made a note to research the actual police reports. In my experience, arguing and nothing were often code words for things that were definitely something. There's another issue, I said. They're requesting a psychological evaluation for both parents. Marcus went pale. What does that mean? It means a court-appointed psychologist will interview you, possibly administer tests, maybe talk to character witnesses. They'll be looking for signs of instability, substance abuse, anger issues. I don't have anger issues. The irony of his raised voice wasn't lost on me. Marcus, you were hospitalized for a panic attack last week. That's gonna come up. That was because of stress. Anyone would have a panic attack dealing with this situation. I know, but the court doesn't know you. They're going to look at patterns, medical records, employment history. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making Mom jump. So what are you saying? That I should just give up? Let Patricia take my daughter away? I'm saying we need to present you in the best possible light. That means getting a steady job, maybe finding your own apartment, possibly doing some counseling to show you're addressing the stress in healthy ways. I don't need counseling, I need my daughter back. This was the Marcus I knew, the one who wanted results without effort, solutions without sacrifice, the one who saw any suggestion for self-improvement as a personal attack. Fine, I said quietly, but if you want me to help with this case, you have to meet me halfway. I can research and file paperwork, but I can't change who you are. Later that night, I returned to the law library, hoping Daniel would be there. I found him at our usual table, surrounded by his own stack of books. Rough night? He asked, taking in what must have been my exhausted expression. You could say that. My brother doesn't want to do any of the hard work that might actually help his case. Daniel closed his book and gave me his full attention. Want to talk about it? For some reason I did. I found myself telling him about Marcus's refusal to consider counseling, his history of job instability, even some of my concerns about what really happened between him and Patricia. It sounds like you're trying to help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, Daniel said gently. He's my brother, and Sophia is innocent in all this. What about Emma Henderson? What does she want out of all this? The question stopped me cold. When was the last time anyone had asked what I wanted? I want to pass the bar exam and start my career, I said slowly. I want to work for a firm where I can make a real difference. I want to build something that's mine. Those are good wants, important wants. He leaned forward. What would happen if you told your family you couldn't take on this case? They'd call me selfish. They'd say I'm abandoning my niece when she needs me most. And what would happen if you do take it on and it interferes with your job prospects? I was quiet for a long moment. I'd probably end up like my parents, making excuses for Marcus for the rest of my life. Daniel nodded. Sounds like you know what you need to do. As I walked to my car that night, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, someone had asked what I wanted and actually listened to the answer. Daniel didn't know my family history, didn't have years of guilt and manipulation clouding his judgment. He just saw me, Emma Henderson, future attorney, person with her own dreams and goals. The question was, did I have the courage to choose myself for once? The call from Miller and Associates came on a Tuesday morning while I was knee-deep in preparing Marcus's response to Patricia's motion. My hands shook as I answered. Emma, this is Carmen Rodriguez. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Not at all, Ms. Rodriguez. Thank you for calling. I have good news. We'd like to offer you the paralegal position. The partners were impressed with your qualifications and academic record. My heart soared. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. There is one thing, though. We need you to start next Monday. I know it's short notice, but we just landed a major case and could really use your research skills immediately. Next Monday. The same day as Marcus's preliminary custody hearing. The hearing I'd spent 3 weeks preparing for. Could I possibly start the following Monday instead? There was a pause. Emma, I'll be honest. This is a competitive field, and we have other qualified candidates. If you can't commit to our timeline? No. Monday is fine. I'll be there. Excellent. HR will email you the paperwork. Welcome to the team. After hanging up, I sat staring at my phone, torn between elation and panic. I had gotten my dream job, but how could I tell my family I wouldn't be available for Marcus's hearing? The answer came when I walked into the kitchen and found Marcus screaming at Mom about something trivial. She'd bought the wrong brand of cereal. I specifically told you I like Honey Nut Cheerios, not regular Cheerios. Do you even listen to me? I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'll go back to the store. Forget it. Just forget it. I can't deal with this stress right now. The hearing is next week, and everything's falling apart. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I need to talk to you about the hearing. Marcus turned to me, his face still flushed with anger. Please tell me you have good news. Please tell me you found something to destroy Patricia's case. I've prepared all the documentation, but I won't be able to attend the hearing. I got the job at Miller & Associates, and I start Monday. The silence that followed was deafening. You, what? Dad's voice came from the doorway. He'd been listening. I got the paralegal position. It's an incredible opportunity. Are you out of your mind? Marcus exploded. My custody hearing is Monday. You've been working on this case for weeks, and now you're just going to abandon it? I'm not abandoning anything. All the research is done, the briefs are filed. Your attorney just needs to present. What attorney? Dad interrupted. Emma, we can't afford a real lawyer, you know that. The room spun. What do you mean, what attorney? Marcus can't represent himself in a custody case. Why not? Mom said. You've done all the legal work. Can't you just walk him through what to say? I stared at my family in disbelief. They actually expected Marcus to walk into family court pro se, armed only with my research, and somehow convince a judge to deny Patricia's relocation request. That's not how it works. Family court is complicated. There are procedures, rules of evidence, cross-examination. So teach me, Marcus said. You've been studying this stuff for years. How hard can it be? Marcus, you can't even handle a conversation about cereal without losing your temper. How are you going to handle a hostile cross-examination? His face darkened. So now you think I'm too stupid to fight for my own daughter? I think you're unprepared to represent yourself in a legal proceeding that could determine whether you see Sophia again. Then help me, he shouted. Be there. That's what sisters do. They show up when it matters. I've been showing up for months. I've researched every case law, filed every motion, prepared every argument. I've put my own life on hold to help you, and now when I finally get a chance at my career, you want me to throw it away? It's just one day, Emma, Mom said quietly. The job will be understood. No, Mom, they won't. This is a competitive firm. They made it clear that if I can't start when they need me, they'll hire someone else. Dad stepped forward, his expression cold. Let me get this straight. You're choosing some job over your own niece? There it was. The emotional manipulation, the guilt, the way they framed everything to make me the villain. I'm choosing my future over cleaning up Marcus's mess, again. This isn't a mess, Marcus yelled. This is my daughter. Your daughter wouldn't be in this situation if you hadn't cheated on her mother multiple times, lost your job, and created such a toxic environment that Patricia felt she had to escape to another state. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Marcus's face went white, then red. Get out, he said quietly. What? Get out of my sight. If you're not going to help me, then I don't want to see your selfish face. Marcus, Mom started. No, she's shown her true colors. When push comes to shove, Emma Henderson only cares about Emma Henderson. I grabbed my purse and keys, my hands shaking with rage and hurt. You're right, Marcus. For once in my life, I'm going to put myself first. And you know what? It feels amazing. I drove to the law library, my safe haven, but found I couldn't concentrate on anything. Daniel found me there an hour later, staring blankly at an open textbook. Rough day? He asked, settling into the chair across from me. I told him everything. The job offer, the family confrontation, the impossible choice I was being forced to make. It's not impossible, Daniel said when I finished. You've already made the right choice. Your family is just trying to make you feel guilty about it. But what if Marcus loses custody? What if Sophia ends up in California and I never see her again? Emma, listen to what you're saying. You're taking responsibility for outcomes that are completely out of your control. Marcus is an adult. His relationship with his daughter is his responsibility, not yours. Try telling that to my parents. I don't need to tell them anything, but you do need to stop setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That night, I came home to find the house eerily quiet. A note from Mom was taped to my bedroom door. Gone to help Marcus find a lawyer, hope you're happy. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I pulled out my laptop and began preparing for my new job, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Heard about Miller & Associates. So proud of you. Celebration drinks Friday? I smiled for what felt like the first time in days. Definitely, I could use some good news. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. My family had never handled rejection well, and I had a sinking suspicion that choosing myself over Marcus's crisis was going to have consequences I couldn't anticipate. The next morning, I woke to find my car keyed and my tires slashed. Welcome to the Henderson family, where love was conditional and revenge was swift. 6 months at Miller & Associates had transformed my life in ways I never imagined. I'd worked on 3 major cases, earned praise from senior partners, and finally felt like I was building something meaningful. The corporate litigation team had welcomed me with open arms, and I'd already been assigned to lead research on a high-profile merger case that would make or break several careers. My apartment near Lincoln Park was small but mine, the first place I'd ever lived that didn't echo with Marcus's tantrums or my parents' endless excuses. I'd furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing each piece myself, instead of accepting hand-me-downs that came with guilt trips attached. Daniel had helped me paint the living room a warm sage green, and we'd spent countless evenings there, him reading case law while I worked on briefs, both of us building the futures we'd dreamed about. I hadn't spoken to my family since the day I found my car vandalized. They'd made their position clear: choose Marcus or lose them all. I'd chosen myself, and the silence had been both painful and liberating. No more 3 a.m. calls about Marcus's latest crisis. No more guilt trips about family loyalty. No more being the responsible one while he got to play the victim. The peace was intoxicating. Sarah had become my chosen family, along with Daniel and a few close colleagues. We celebrated small victories. My first successful motion, Daniel's summer internship at a prestigious firm, Sarah's promotion at her marketing company. These were relationships built on mutual respect and genuine affection, not obligation and emotional blackmail. That changed on a cold December morning when my phone rang at 6 a.m., unknown number. "Emma, it's Patricia." I nearly dropped the phone. Marcus's ex-wife was the last person I expected to hear from. "Patricia, how did you get this number?" "From your friend Sarah. I found her through social media." "I hope that's okay." "Emma, I need to talk to you. It's about Marcus and what really happened between us." "I don't think that's appropriate." "He's been arrested, Emma, last night, for aggravated assault and drug trafficking." My blood went cold as I sat up in bed, Daniel stirring beside me. "What happened?" "He nearly killed his girlfriend, Jessica Walsh. She's 23, Emma, just a kid who worked at the coffee shop near his apartment. She's in intensive care at Northwestern Memorial, with a traumatic brain injury." I pressed my hand to my forehead, trying to process the information. "And drugs?" "The police found his apartment full of stolen prescription medications: OxyContin, Adderall, Xanax. He'd been running a distribution network through dating apps, targeting vulnerable women and using them as dealers. Jessica tried to break up with him when she found out what he was doing." The picture Patricia painted was even worse than I'd feared. Marcus hadn't just been an abuser. He'd been a predator who systematically targeted women in recovery, single mothers, anyone desperate enough to get pulled into his schemes. "Emma, your parents called me 3 times last night. They want me to testify as a character witness, to say Marcus was never violent, that he's just been struggling since our divorce. They're planning to blame Jessica for the attack." I felt sick. Even now, even with Marcus facing serious felony charges, my parents were preparing to sacrifice another victim to protect their golden boy. "There's something else." Patricia's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "The police detective handling the case, Detective Morrison, she specializes in domestic violence. She's been tracking Marcus for months, building a case. She wants to talk to you." Detective Lisa Morrison was nothing like what I'd expected. A woman in her 40s with graying hair and kind but sharp eyes, she'd spent 15 years working sex crimes and domestic violence cases. When we met at a diner near the police station, she spread out a file that was at least 3 inches thick. "Your brother has been on our radar for 8 months, she began without preamble. "We've been building a case against him for multiple felonies: aggravated assault, drug trafficking, stalking, witness intimidation, and sexual assault." Sexual assault. The words hit me like a physical blow. "There are 7 victims we know of, spanning the last 4 years. Jessica Walsh was victim number 7, but she was the first one brave enough to press charges immediately after the attack. Detective Morrison showed me photographs that made my stomach turn. Not just Jessica's injuries, though those were horrific enough, but a pattern of escalating violence against women who'd all been targeted through the same methods. Marcus used dating apps to find women who were vulnerable, recent divorcees, single mothers, women in recovery from addiction. He'd present himself as stable, financially secure, someone who could help them get back on their feet. She flipped through victim statements, each one telling a similar story. Marcus would love bomb his targets, showering them with attention and gifts they later learned were stolen. He'd move them into relationships quickly, isolating them from friends and family. Then came the control, the manipulation, and eventually the violence. Victim number 3, Angela Rodriguez, was a nurse at Mercy Hospital. Marcus convinced her to steal prescription medications for his, quote, chronic pain. When she tried to stop, he broke her arm and threatened to report her to the medical board for drug theft. Victim number 5, Christina Park, was a graduate student in social work. Marcus used her empathy against her, convincing her that his violence was a trauma response that she could help him heal from. She stayed for 2 years, documenting everything because she thought she was gathering evidence for his therapy. Each story was a masterclass in predatory behavior, showing a level of calculated manipulation that went far beyond anything I'd witnessed growing up. This wasn't the troubled but ultimately harmless brother my parents had protected. This was a serial abuser who'd refined his techniques over years of practice. "What I need from you, Emma," Detective Morrison said, closing the file, "is insight into the family system that enabled this behavior. Your parents have already hired an expensive defense attorney who's claiming Marcus has untreated mental illness stemming from childhood trauma." I thought about my own childhood, trying to identify any trauma that might explain Marcus's behavior. Our parents had been indulgent, not abusive. We'd been financially comfortable, not impoverished. The only trauma Marcus had experienced was being held accountable for his actions, something that had happened so rarely it barely qualified as trauma at all. Detective Morrison, I grew up in the same house Marcus did. We had the same parents, the same opportunities, the same basic upbringing. The difference is that Marcus learned early that consequences were negotiable if he could make himself pitiful enough. She nodded, making notes. "Tell me about the family dynamics. How did your parents typically respond when Marcus got in trouble?" For the next 2 hours, I walked Detective Morrison through decades of enabling behavior. The times Marcus had been caught cheating in school, only to have my parents blame the teachers for not understanding his learning style. The accidents he'd caused while driving drunk, dismissed as youthful mistakes that shouldn't ruin his future. The girlfriends who'd complained about his behavior, labeled as troublemakers and attention seekers by my parents. They created a world where Marcus never had to face real consequences, I explained. Every time someone tried to hold him accountable, my parents would swoop in with explanations, excuses, or financial solutions. They taught him that victims were obstacles to be managed, not people whose pain mattered. Detective Morrison's expression grew grimmer as she listened. This pattern of family enabling is common in cases involving serial offenders. The family becomes complicit in the abuse by consistently prioritizing the perpetrator's comfort over the victim's safety. She pulled out another file, this one containing financial records. "We've traced over $60,000 in payments your parents made to Marcus's victims over the past 3 years. Payments they called loans or gifts, but which were clearly hush money." The revelation stunned me. My parents, who'd claimed they couldn't afford to help with my student loans or co-sign my apartment lease, had been secretly funding Marcus's abuse by paying off his victims. "Emma, I need you to understand something. Your brother isn't going to prison just for assault. With the evidence we have, the drug trafficking, the pattern of abuse, the witness intimidation, he's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Your parents are going to pressure you to help with his defense. I won't do it. I believe you. But they're going to try everything. Guilt, manipulation, financial pressure. They might even threaten you directly." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Family meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Don't even think about skipping." "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. I know this is awkward, given everything that's happened. Patricia, before you say anything, I want you to know I'm sorry. For not seeing what was really going on, for the custody case, for all of it. She nodded slowly. Emma, you were manipulated just like I was. Your family is very good at controlling narratives, at making victims feel like they're the ones causing problems. She pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. I've been building a case against Marcus for months, with the help of a victim's advocate. But when I heard about Jessica's attack, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The photos she showed me were devastating. Hospital records, police reports, restraining orders. A paper trail of violence that painted Marcus not as the troubled but lovable brother I'd grown up with, but as a serial abuser who'd been protected by a family system that prioritized reputation over safety. The night he broke my ribs, Patricia said, pointing to an X-ray, your mother sat with me in the emergency room and helped me practice the story we'd tell the doctor. I fell down the stairs, we said. Clumsy Patricia, always having accidents. I stared at the medical records, my hands shaking. How many times? Documented? 17 emergency room visits over 3 years. Undocumented. I stopped counting after 50 incidents. She flipped through more papers. Your father once helped Marcus clean blood off the kitchen floor after he slammed my head into the counter. Your mother bought makeup to cover bruises before family photos. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Every family gathering where Patricia had seemed withdrawn, every holiday where she'd worn long sleeves despite the heat, every time I'd wondered why she never seemed happy, it all made horrible sense now. Why didn't you ever reach out to me directly? Patricia's laugh was bitter. Emma, you were in college, then law school. Your parents made it very clear that if I poisoned you against Marcus, they'd make sure I never saw Sophia again. They had money for lawyers, connections in the community. I was a 22-year-old with no family support and a baby to protect. The custody battle, I learned, had never been about Marcus wanting to be a father. It was about control, about punishing Patricia for daring to leave. The legal briefs I'd so carefully crafted, the research I'd stayed up nights completing, all of it had been weaponized to terrorize a woman who'd already suffered years of abuse. Jessica isn't his first victim since our divorce, Patricia continued. There was Amanda Chen, a teacher he met at a bar. She filed a restraining order after he showed up at her school and threatened her students. Then Rebecca Martinez, a nurse who tried to break up with him after 2 dates. He vandalized her car and left dead flowers on her doorstep for weeks. My stomach churned as I recognized the pattern. The same pattern of escalation I'd studied in domestic violence cases during law school, the same red flags I'd been trained to spot. How had I missed them in my own brother? The drugs were new, though, Patricia said. According to Jessica's statement, Marcus had been dealing prescription painkillers to pay for cocaine. He'd steal pills from elderly patients when he worked those temporary healthcare jobs. I thought about all the times Marcus had been laid off from jobs, all the explanations my parents had provided. Budget cuts, personality conflicts, bad timing, never the truth about theft, harassment, or substance abuse. Where is Jessica now? I asked. Safe house across town, 3 broken ribs, severe concussion, psychological trauma that'll take years to heal. She's 23, Emma. Just a kid who thought she was helping a guy get his life together. My phone buzzed with a call from Dad. I declined it. Why are you telling me this now? Because your parents called me this morning. They want me to testify as a character witness at Marcus's bail hearing. They want me to say he's never been violent, that he's a good father who deserves another chance. She leaned forward. Emma, if he gets out on bail, he's going to hurt someone else, maybe kill them this time. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm. I excused myself and stepped outside, calling Daniel. Emma, you sound upset. Can you meet me? I don't know what I need. An hour later, Daniel found me sitting in Millennium Park, staring at the skyline. I told him everything. Patricia's revelations, my parents' complicity, the years of lies and cover-ups. I helped him, I whispered. All that legal research, those custody briefs, I was helping an abuser try to get access to his victim and child. You didn't know, Daniel said firmly. Your family lied to you, manipulated you. This isn't your fault. But I should have seen it. All those panic attacks, the job losses, the way he talked about Patricia, I should have known. Emma, you saw what they wanted you to see. You were raised in a family that protected Marcus at all costs. How could you have known the truth when everyone around you was lying? My phone rang again. Mom, this time. Emma, thank God we need you. Marcus is in jail and we don't know what to do. When my parents finally tracked down my number through Miller & Associates' main line, the conversation was everything I'd expected and worse. Emma, we're at the police station. Mom's voice was shaky but still carried that familiar edge of entitlement. They're saying terrible things about Marcus, but you know how the system is biased against men in these situations. I know about Jessica, Mom. I know about Patricia. I know about everything you've been hiding. The pause stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Patricia called you. It wasn't a question. That vindictive little… Stop! My voice cut through her brewing tirade. Just stop. I've seen the hospital records, Mom. The police reports. The photos of what Marcus did to her. Emma, you don't understand the whole situation. Patricia was always unstable, always dramatic. She provoked Marcus, made him feel trapped. Are you listening to yourself? You're blaming a victim for her own abuse. I'm protecting my son. Marcus made mistakes, yes, but he's not a monster. He's sick, Emma. He needs treatment, not imprisonment. The familiar manipulation was there. The way she reframed Marcus's deliberate violence as illness. The way she positioned the family as victims of circumstances beyond their control. Where was this concern for treatment when Patricia begged you to get Marcus help 5 years ago? Where was it when Amanda filed the restraining order? Or when Rebecca had to move apartments because he was stalking her? Those women exaggerated. Jessica is in intensive care, Mom. She has a skull fracture. How exactly did she exaggerate that? Dad's voice came through the background, angry and demanding. Tell her about the bail money. Tell her we need the bail money. My blood went cold. Bail money? We've talked to a lawyer, Mom said quickly. If we can post bail, Marcus can get treatment while he fights these charges. But it's $50,000, and with the house already mortgaged. You want me to pay Marcus's bail? It's an investment in his future, Emma. In our whole family's future. If he goes to trial from jail, he'll never get a fair hearing. But if he's out, getting treatment, showing the court he's committed to change. I found myself standing in my office, staring out at the Chicago skyline, feeling like I was watching this conversation from outside my own body. No. Emma, please, you're the only one with good credit, with savings, the lawyer says. No, Mom, I'm not paying $50,000 to put an abuser back on the streets. How can you call your own brother an abuser? Because that's what he is. That's what the evidence shows, what the hospital records prove, what multiple victims have testified to under oath. If you don't help us, Dad's voice came through clearly now, harsh and ultimatum-laden, you're choosing to destroy this family. You're choosing to let your brother rot in jail for the rest of his life. I thought about Jessica in the ICU, about Patricia rebuilding her life 3 states away, about all the future victims who would be safe if Marcus remained behind bars. I'm choosing justice, Dad, something this family forgot about a long time ago. I looked at Daniel, who squeezed my hand supportively. Mom, I haven't been welcome in this family for years. I was just too afraid to admit it. I hung up and immediately called Patricia back. I want to help, I told her. Whatever you need for the case against Marcus, I'll provide it. Character testimony. Documentation of the family's pattern of enabling whatever it takes. The trial preparation consumed 3 months of my life, but not in the way my family's crises usually did. This time, I was working toward justice rather than enabling destruction. Patricia's lawyer, Maria Santos, was a powerhouse who specialized in domestic violence cases, and she welcomed my insights into the Henderson family dynamics with grim professionalism. Your testimony will be crucial, she explained during one of our preparation sessions. You can speak to the family's pattern of enabling, their history of covering up Marcus's violence, and their attempts to manipulate you into helping them continue that pattern. I'd gathered evidence systematically, financial records showing how many times my parents had bailed Marcus out of trouble, witness statements from neighbors who'd heard Patricia's screams but been told to mind their own business, even my own research files that demonstrated how thoroughly I'd been deceived about the custody case. The most damning evidence came from Marcus himself. Prison phone calls were recorded, and he'd spent weeks ranting to anyone who would listen about how he was being framed, how his victims were lying, how his family had betrayed him. The recordings revealed a man completely divorced from reality, incapable of accepting responsibility for the harm he'd caused. During one particularly disturbing call to Mom, he'd said, "When I get out of here, Emma's going to pay for what she's done. They're all going to pay." Daniel accompanied me to every court session, a steady presence that anchored me when the proceedings became overwhelming. Watching Marcus in his orange jumpsuit, seeing him try to charm the judge with the same manipulative tactics he'd used on our family for years, was surreal and heartbreaking. But it was Jessica's testimony that broke the courtroom's composure. 23 years old, still bearing faint scars from her injuries, she spoke with quiet strength about the night Marcus had nearly killed her. "He seemed so normal at first," she said, addressing the jury directly. "Charming, even. He told me about his difficult childhood, his struggle with depression, his ex-wife who'd supposedly turned his daughter against him. I thought I was helping someone who'd been wronged by life." She described the escalation, how quickly Marcus's charm had turned to possessiveness, then to threats, then to violence, how he'd isolated her from friends, monitored her phone, controlled her finances. "The night he attacked me, I'd told him I wanted to break up. I thought I was being gentle about it, kind. But the moment I said I wanted to end our relationship, it was like a switch flipped. He became someone else entirely, someone terrifying." Mom and Dad sat in the back row during Jessica's testimony, their faces stone cold. I couldn't tell if they were finally seeing Marcus for who he really was, or if they were still constructing elaborate justifications for his behavior. The prosecution presented 17 different incidents of violence against 4 different women spanning 8 years. The defense argued that Marcus was mentally ill, that he'd suffered childhood trauma, that he deserved treatment rather than punishment. But the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5 if he completed extensive therapy programs and demonstrated genuine remorse. Daniel met me outside the courthouse. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said, and meant it. My parents' reaction to the verdict was swift and predictable. That evening, I received a formal letter from their attorney, informing me that I was being removed from their will and barred from any future family gatherings. The letter accused me of, quote, betraying family loyalty for personal gain, and claimed that my testimony had been motivated by jealousy and vindictiveness. I read the letter twice, then filed it away with all the other documentation from Marcus's case. Their attempt to hurt me with disinheritance only proved how little they understood about what I actually valued. I'd never wanted their money. I'd wanted their love, their support, their recognition of my worth. But love that came with conditions wasn't love at all. Sarah threw me a freedom party that weekend, inviting colleagues from Miller & Associates and friends from law school. It was the first celebration in my life that wasn't overshadowed by Marcus's chaos or my parents' disappointment. To Emma, Daniel raised his glass, for having the courage to choose truth over comfort, justice over family loyalty, and her own future over everyone else's expectations. The toast felt like a benediction, a formal acknowledgement that I'd finally stepped into the life I was meant to live. Work became my sanctuary and my passion. Carmen Rodriguez had taken notice of my dedication during the trial, particularly my ability to navigate complex family dynamics and identify patterns of abuse that others might miss. I watched Romano's face cycle through denial, anger, and finally a kind of desperate calculation as he realized his 20-year con was unraveling in real time. "That recording is fabricated," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Digital audio can be faked easily these days." "Can it?" I pressed another button. A new document appeared on screen. Bank records showing millions of dollars flowing from Mitchell Industries subsidiaries to accounts in the Cayman Islands. "These are from your banks, Vincent. Authenticated by federal investigators who are very interested in speaking with you." Patricia Williams was studying the documents with the sharp attention of someone who'd spent decades in corporate finance. Vincent, your signature is on all of these transfers. How do you explain moving company funds to personal offshore accounts? Those were authorized by Richard. Ask him. All eyes turned to my father, who looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Vincent, I never authorized any of this. I don't even know what these subsidiary companies do. They don't do anything, I said quietly. They exist solely to move money out of Mitchell Industries and into Vincent's personal accounts. Money that was stolen from the company, from the employees, from you, Dad. The word Dad hung in the air like a confession. For the first time, I had acknowledged our relationship in front of the board, dropping the pretense that I was just another investor. Romano made one last desperate play. Even if these allegations were true, which they're not, Isabella has no standing here. She's not a shareholder, she's not on the board, she has no authority to… Actually, I interrupted, I have ultimate authority. I placed a final document on the table. Share conversion agreement, executed this morning. Vincent, remember all those subsidiary companies you created to hide your embezzlement? The ones with special voting rights that you thought gave you control over the company? His face went ashen as he realized what I was about to say. I bought them, all of them. Every shell company, every subsidiary, every voting trust you established over the past 5 years. When you steal money and convert it to company shares for tax purposes, those shares still exist. They just needed someone with enough capital to purchase them at fair market value. I turned to address the entire board. Ladies and gentlemen, I now own 51.7% of Mitchell Industries. Vincent Romano's attempt to sell this company to corporate raiders for $68 million is hereby terminated. The room erupted. Patricia Williams was asking rapid-fire questions about the legal implications. Dr. Torres was demanding to see documentation of the share transfers. James Foster was calling for a recess to consult with legal counsel. But I only had eyes for 2 people. Romano sat frozen in his chair, finally understanding that his victim's daughter had just used his own criminal enterprise to destroy him. And my father stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not disappointment, not dismissal, but something that looked almost like awe. Isabella, he said quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos around the table, where did you get the money to? I looked at the man who'd told me I'd never amount to anything, who'd dismissed my dreams as childish fantasies, who'd been so ashamed of my supposed failures that he'd lied to people about my education. I have a proposition for you, she said 6 months after Marcus's sentencing. We're expanding our family law division, specifically to handle domestic violence cases. The work is emotionally demanding, but it's some of the most important legal work we do. I'd like you to head up the victim advocacy program. The position would mean working directly with abuse survivors, helping them navigate the legal system while rebuilding their lives. It would mean using my own experience with family manipulation and gaslighting to help others recognize these patterns in their own relationships. I'd be honored, I told her. This is exactly the kind of work I want to be doing. Within a year, our domestic violence division had helped secure protective orders for over 200 victims and had successfully prosecuted dozens of abusers. Each case taught me something new about resilience, about the courage it takes to leave dangerous situations, about the complex ways trauma affects decision-making. I kept a photo of Sophia on my desk, not the family pictures from before I knew the truth, but a recent photo Patricia had sent of her daughter's first school play. Sophia was 5 now, bright and confident, growing up in California with no memory of her father's violence. She was the reminder I needed that breaking cycles of abuse was worth every difficult choice I'd made. Patricia and I had maintained contact, not as family members bound by obligation, but as allies in ensuring that Marcus never got the chance to hurt Sophia or anyone else. She'd remarried a kind man who treated both her and Sophia with genuine respect and was finishing her nursing degree. I never thought I'd be able to trust my own judgment again, she told me during one of our phone calls. But therapy helped me understand that I wasn't the problem. The system that protected Marcus was the problem. Her words resonated deeply. I'd spent years thinking there was something wrong with me for feeling uncomfortable with my family's dynamics, for questioning the stories they told about Marcus's behavior. Learning to trust my own perceptions again had been one of the hardest parts of breaking free from their influence. Daniel's proposal came on a crisp autumn evening as we walked along Lake Michigan. We'd been together for nearly 2 years, building a relationship based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine partnership. Everything I'd never seen modeled in my family of origin. "Emma," he said, stopping near the lighthouse, "I know we said we'd wait until you were established in your career, but I can't imagine waiting another day to ask you this." The ring was perfect, not flashy or expensive, but thoughtful and elegant, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. More importantly, the proposal itself was everything I'd dreamed of. A question asked by someone who knew me completely, who supported my ambitions, who never expected me to make myself smaller to accommodate his needs. "I want to build a life with you," he continued, "not because we need each other, but because we choose each other, every day, in all the ways that matter." My yes came through tears of joy, the first purely happy tears I'd cried in years. Our wedding 8 months later was small but perfect. Sarah was my maid of honor, Carmen Rodriguez attended as my mentor and friend, and several colleagues from the domestic violence division celebrated with us. Patricia sent a beautiful card with a photo of Sophia, now 6, and missing her front teeth, holding a sign that read, "Congratulations, Aunt Emma." The absence of my parents and Marcus felt notable but not devastating. Daniel's family had welcomed me with open arms, treating me like the daughter they'd always wanted. His parents, both professors at Northwestern, were everything mine weren't, supportive without being controlling, proud without being possessive, loving without attaching conditions. "Family isn't just blood," Daniel's mother had told me during our engagement party. "It's the people who celebrate your successes instead of resenting them, who lift you up instead of tearing you down." 3 years into our marriage, Daniel and I bought a house in Oak Park, a 1920s bungalow with original hardwood floors, and a garden where we planted vegetables and herbs. It was the kind of home I dreamed of as a child, filled with laughter instead of tension, with books instead of broken glass, with love that felt safe and unconditional. The domestic violence clinic I'd founded under Miller & Associates' umbrella had grown into one of the most respected programs in the Midwest. We provided free legal services to abuse survivors, trained law enforcement on trauma-informed interviewing techniques, and educated judges about the complexities of domestic violence cases. My proudest achievement was the Marcus Henderson Prevention Protocol, a comprehensive screening system that helped identify potential abusers before they escalated to physical violence. Named ironically after my brother, it had been implemented in family courts across 3 states and had prevented countless women from experiencing what Patricia and Jessica had endured. Marcus himself had become a cautionary tale in domestic violence prevention circles. His case was studied in law schools as an example of how family enablement can allow abuse to escalate unchecked. The recordings of his prison phone calls were used in training sessions to help advocates recognize the mindset of unrepentant abusers. He'd written me letters from prison, dozens of them over the years. I kept them all, unopened, in a file folder marked "Evidence of Continued Manipulation." Someday they might be useful for research purposes or for helping other survivors understand that abusers rarely change, even when facing consequences. After 4 years, he was eligible for parole. I testified at his hearing not as his sister, but as an expert witness on domestic violence patterns and recidivism rates. The parole board denied his request unanimously, citing his continued refusal to accept responsibility for his crimes and his documented threats against his victims. "Mr. Henderson has shown no genuine remorse," the board chair noted. "His primary concern appears to be his own situation rather than the harm he's caused others. He remains a significant risk to public safety." Patricia attended the hearing via video link from California, where she'd just graduated from nursing school and was working in a trauma unit. She'd found her calling in helping other survivors heal, just as I'd found mine in seeking justice for them. That evening, Daniel and I sat in our garden, watching the sunset paint our vegetables gold. I thought about the path that had brought me here, the years of enabling, the moment of awakening, the painful but necessary choice to prioritize truth over family loyalty. "Do you ever regret it?" Daniel asked, as if reading my thoughts. "Cutting ties with your parents, testifying against Marcus?" I considered the question seriously. There were moments of sadness, certainly grief for the family I'd wished I had, for the childhood that might have been different, for the relationships that were probably irreparable. But regret? No. I regret not seeing the truth sooner, I said finally. I regret all the years I spent enabling Marcus's abuse. But choosing justice over family loyalty? Choosing my own future over their expectations? Never. We sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged. Two people who'd found each other, despite difficult beginnings. Who'd built something beautiful and healthy and true. In the distance, I could hear children playing in neighboring yards, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Someday, Daniel and I might add our own children to that chorus. If we did, they would grow up in a home where love wasn't conditional, where success was celebrated rather than resented, where telling the truth was valued more than protecting family secrets. They would never know their Uncle Marcus, never meet their paternal grandparents, but they would know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable harmful behavior, even when that behavior comes from family. They would learn that you can't save people who don't want to be saved, but you can save yourself. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.